Ekonomi dunia kini di persimpangan dilema untuk menyukarkan proses pembuatan dasar. Krisis berganda kali ini menyaksikan pemulihan amat perlahan berlaku dan juga banyak negara masih lagi berdepan dengan bebanan besar inflasi. Namun dalam menyingkap susur krisis ini, ada juga manfaat ekonomi diterima, tetapi persoalannya di mana keseimbangannya. Kita bersama dengan Ketua Ekonomi Juwai IQI, Shan Saeed, yang bersedia pada ketika ini. Shan, thank you so much for joining us. Shan, this morning, alchemy of financial markets, who's delivering economic, that's the focus for today. Shan, first of all, Shan, in the last 15 years, markets dynamics have changed. We have witnessed and seen QE, banking going down, and also we've seen geopolitical risk, sovereign debt risk in Europe, especially in Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and also Spain economies, and also above all, COVID creating havoc in the global economy. What went wrong with the global economy right now, even after getting economic and policy level support, and why it has yet to achieve stability, Shan?
Yes, as you rightly pointed out, the alchemy of financial markets has changed dramatically in the last 15 years. We have seen QE, we have seen sovereign debt risk starting from Greece in 2010. The market has failed to get stability because of two reasons. One, we had QE. QE created income inequality, and it failed to spur growth for the global economy. Number two, there have been policy errors. So wherever you have policy errors, the cost is too high. And who is going to bear the cost of that policy error is ultimately the consumers. So consumers have lost a lot of wealth in the last 15 years, and the sentiments remain quite puzzled. A lot of people might say that we have made a lot of money, but overall in the last 15 years, the global economy has lacked growth and there has been income inequality. I am a witness to this December 2008 when Fed started QE program. So purpose of QE was to support the businesses and to encourage consumers to spend more. But what we have seen right now after 15 years, according to the latest survey of Bank of America, consumer sentiments are down, and we are going back to 1970 era of stagflation. And IQI was perhaps one of the few, market commentators where we said in November 2020 in our newsletter that stagflation is going to hit advanced economies very badly. And what we are witnessing right now is perfectly happening with stagflationary environment. Consumer sentiments are bearish. And again, the most important variable that is coming back into the market is recession. And recession is not a business cycle, it's a consumer cycle. When consumers don't spend money, the businesses don't invest, the economy actually shrinks. So what went wrong with the global economy? There have been policy error. Central banks have taken sole responsibility in delivering economic outcomes, because before 2019, central banks were getting all the limelight. And after COVID, governments pitched in because one single policy cannot spur growth in the economy. So I think that was the ideal situation, to have an amalgamation of fiscal policy and monetary policy to spur growth, to bring back confidence in the economies. But I'm afraid these policy errors could not do any good for the global economy. Some economies have flourished, but most of the economies have not been able to spur growth. And the last 15 years, two factors have emerged quite significantly. One is confidence and the other is fear. Wherever you have confidence in the economy, the investors have gone into those economies. And wherever you have fear is just like a depreciating asset. Investors have moved away from those economies. So I think these two non-economic macro variables are creating a huge impact for the global economy: confidence and fear. And the latest variable that is very important post-COVID is macroeconomic stability. How governments have been able to maintain confidence, consumption patterns, investment, those factors are very important. So macroeconomic stability has now become the buzzword. Wherever you have macroeconomic stability, investors will come into that country.
And also, Shan, you have mentioned about inflation to remain high in advanced economies like USA, Europe, UK, and also globally, basically. But the other side of the argument is the main beneficiary of inflation is the government, because inflation nominal income boosts the revenues. And look at USA, budget deficit is narrowed to 1.7 trillion US dollars, down from 4 trillion over the past 12 months. And also raising inflation has boosted tax revenues to a record high of 4.5 trillion US dollars. What's your view and take on this side of equation?
That is partially true. I agree with you that inflation-driven GDP growth has boosted government revenues. Obviously, when you have inflation, the consumers are still spending money, the momentum is going. So at times you have a trade-off either to have inflation or to have deflation. But if you recall, I read it many years ago in Economist magazine, that was, I think, June 2020, 2010. I don't really recall the date, where they said that deflation, where the prices are falling, is more precarious than inflation, because when you have deflation, the consumer sentiments are down, businesses are down, and you can't have enough policy instrument to spur growth and to get deflation away from the economy. In case of inflation, you have economic policies, you have economic tools and policy levers to curb inflation. So in my opinion, I have been saying that inflation-driven GDP growth is good, but at times you have to take care of consumers, because with inflation, the consumers, they suffer because of their living standard goes down, the purchasing power go down. So you have to strike a policy where consumers, they don't get hurt. And ultimately, inflation is curbed by appreciating currency or by raising interest rate. So yes, there's a trade-off between inflation and deflation, but at times inflation creates havoc. And what we are witnessing right now is stagflation, where many advanced economies like Europe is in very bad shape. US will have the same stagflationary environment, of course UK as well. Inflation remains elevated in these advanced economies. And again, policy decision makers and policy makers are having difficult time how to curb inflation at this point of time.
And also, Shan, if you look at inflation again, inflation outlook remains elevated in many advanced economies, and you have been spot on in your call since you said that 1970 is back, and we are witnessing that right now. But where do you see the Fed interest rate hikes for the last 3 quarters? Can gold standard come back in the market?
I think among all the spreads, my personal favorite is the 2-year note and its relation with FFR, Federal Fund Rate. And what we are seeing right now, the forward guidance is that by April 2023, Fed will increase discount rate by 2.25%. Look at the 10-year yield. It moved up from 1.51 to 2.86, is almost up by 90%. So I think, in my opinion, Fed will continue to raise rate. But for what the Fed doesn't really understand the psychology of market chaos. If you see in the last week, $14 billion left the equity market, and it has been 9th straight week that funds have been getting out of the equity markets. So I think moving forward, with hike in interest rate, I think recession is very much on the cards, and growth shock will come into the market, and that will create a lot of shenanigans for investors. To your point of gold standards, I'm a big fan of gold because it can bring stability at the moment. Right now, what the global economy is witnessing, we have not been able to get stability even with policy levers, even with QE, government support. So if we go back to that era of 1971 of gold standards, and we can continue with US dollar, at least policy makers have an alternative to either follow US dollar or to follow gold standard. And gold has always brought stability in financial markets. So I think, in my opinion, if we can have gold standards, it can bring stability, investors can have confidence, and many economies can have macroeconomic stability.
Alright, Shan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Tadi Shan Saeed, Ketua Pakar Ekonomi Juwai QI. Kita berbincangkan tentang keadaan semasa dalam pasaran kewangan dan apakah kelebihan dan juga kesannya yang boleh kita perhatikan dan juga perlu diberikan tumpuan kerana ini pada akhirnya memberikan kesan untuk pembuatan dasar monetari khususnya. Termasuk juga di Malaysia ini dalam menentukan kadar monetari kita yang akan dijangka berubah pada hujung tahun ini. Baik, kita akan berhenti sekali lagi kembali selepas ini.